Hello, everybody. I'm here today with a special guest, James Felton Keith, who is running for Congress in New York's 13th district. James and I actually go back pre COVID, where we met as a part of the Basic Income March that took place in 2019 there in New York City. And, I was really excited to be talking to someone who was actually running on Basic Income as part of his platform at the time. And James can fill us in on what happened there with the pandemic and everything on his end. But it's great to have him here today. Thanks for being here, James.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Again, it's been too long since we've talked. Well, I see all your stuff online. I think maybe we've had some back and forth there, but yeah, thanks for having me, and also for just again keeping up the fight. I feel like this issue comes in waves, and that's a problem. So
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting to learn about the waves of basic income from the larger historical perspective, 70s and everything that happened then compared to now. Pandemic was definitely like a mini wave where I felt like, oh my gosh, I could taste it. Like I was so close, I could taste it, and it was like disappeared.
yeah, no, I think it comes in. The problem with I think how we as activists engage basic income and how we convince policymakers to engage basic income is it usually peaks out when desperation peaks out. And we're definitely in one of those times right now. I think we were in the 70s during some of the financial crises that happened not only here in New York, but across the country. And again, Richard Nixon was available for it, as you know, as I'm sure some of your viewers know. But the just diversity of this country allows for fear mongering around who should get what and why. And so we usually end up stagnating and not getting what we're owed, as I like to say. I think because of those mixed messages, place by place, locale by locale. And again, we're in one of those new spaces where we are hyper desperate. People are poorer than they were before the pandemic. When we were arguing about not only just poverty, but why people should have ethically guaranteed income, a basic income, a UBI. Even the language has started to shift because people don't like the messenger. When we were
Yeah.
arguing, people had a little bit more money in their pocket, across the board than they do today. We're a little bit poorer in 25 than we were in 19.
Well, I mean, we're talking today on the day where SNAP is stopped. What a historic day that is for just the absurdity of what's going on there. And also the absurdity of this crazy stuff being said against SNAP recipients is now being channeled through AI generated slop. And people are just believing it is real. And Fox News even carried these clips and like pitched them as real. And then they corrected afterwards. But like, seriously? Like, how do you even,
I mean, but that
how?
goes with the hate, right? I mean, again,
Yeah.
I won't even just call it hate. It's just the general misunderstanding of who our neighbors are, both near and far, and our ability to discredit their need, the validity of it. Even after this, I'm going literally down 2 blocks. There's a food pantry there, and we have a bunch of interviews and talks with some of the people. That food pantry is always there here on like 104th Street and Lenox, which is like 6th in New York. But the line is now 2 blocks down where I can see it from my window. I knew it was there, but now we see the people because yes, SNAP is ending. But you know, we hear these stories. I just had some woman who was visiting from rural Illinois. We were up at the tip top of Manhattan in a neighborhood called Inwood. This woman was visiting apparently her son and his family, and we started talking about lowering the price of living, increasing people's incomes, which is really our platform. And she went on this rant of stories about how they help their neighbors and they help these Black ladies that live in their neighborhood with a lot of kids from different babies' daddies, this little old white lady. And she's like, we can take care of our own. We don't need any help. We don't need any handouts. And this is what I think conservatives do. They go into the accountability message. So she's like, she can bootstrap it up, work on the donations that we're giving her as philanthropists and make it over. And she started talking about these $50 gift cards that she gave this lady for Christmas. And I was like, so this $50 gift card is gonna, help her out. And then she referred to, I had a staffer there, this little Somali woman, little brown woman. She was like, we're helping out all these people. And she didn't point to her specific, but she gestured like this chick. I'm obviously standing there as a relatively tall dude in a blue suit. So she thought she was talking to a peer. But I was like, I let her leave. I let her pass because I wasn't going to
Yeah.
change her. Her son came up embarrassed, grabbed the baby. They continued walking. But I told the woman on our camera, I was like, this is what we're dealing with. The conservative side of the coin is stuck on the idea of accountability. And I like it and I get it. I think we hear it's a through line through all of our religions, through self determination, through what we should be doing as individuals. But what people who are stuck on that individualistic message and accountability, they fail to miss that some of these failures of distributing housing, healthcare, food, education are really systematic failures. They don't think in systems, and the people who are speaking to them are talking about systems. And I think that is why we have to engage politicians to tell them to start talking about systems place by place, no matter whether they're in rural Illinois or they're in the most urban place in America here in New York City. And so we spend a lot of time talking to people about that. You're owed this money because you've already given so much value to the local and the broader economy. And in every conversation that we have in this district, people start with, I don't want a handout because it's indignant.
Yeah.
And then I tell them about how much dignity they've already lost by giving us all their value. And so one way that we talk about basic income here is we tie it to the productivity in the economy. We tie it to what we call a data dividend. And it's only because not that we want to have conversations about tech with people, but it's mainly because I'm trying to communicate to them that there's an asset that companies are using, i.e. your data, to generate productivity or profitability right now, and they owe you a piece. That's all we're saying. It's above and beyond your wages. I still may negotiate a wage with you, which is like a retainer for your time. Then there's another piece that you're owed. And that piece, that gap is frankly somewhere between about 12 and 18K a year, depending on who you are and where you are. It's about $1,000 a month. And that is usually the gap in what people can afford with housing, healthcare, education, or as we're seeing with SNAP, food. Most
Yeah.
food benefits per month are about $200. Anyway, I mean, it starts with having a conversation. That's why we, I think, have to be in politics because if you're not famous or you can't sing, I have this raspy voice. It's always like this. I can't sing. If you can't play ball, any ball, with your feet, with your hands, you can't throw one, you can't swing a bat at one, then you rarely have a method to speak to people about what's wrong.
Yeah, let's go into this the we owe us and data dividend and everything a little bit more. First of all, I think it's interesting too that, I mean, you were already talking about this in, pre-COVID times. And so of course it's also pre ChatGPT times. And, here you are talking about they have our data and they're using it. And it was already a good argument even prior to ChatGPT, but I think it's a much stronger argument even post ChatGPT because how did these language models, what were they trained on? What were these image models trained on? What were these video models and the audio models trained on? All of it was stuff we all created together. It's just all of our stuff that we've generated is fed into these machines and it helps them emulate us and like how it like how can you look at like a dividend as being some kind of handouts when it comes to like someone like Jeff Bezos. He's never going to turn down a handout. He lobbies for subsidies. He wants the biggest tax that he could possibly find. He wants the government to give him money so that he'll create jobs. It's why is it that it's okay for the rich to demand all of the billions of dollars, but for us, we're like, no, 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 I don't want a handout. I want a hand up, if anything.
No, no, I think again, it's the language. Number one, a lot of people aren't familiar with that word dividend because they don't own anything, whether they don't own a share of stock, they don't own a
Yeah.
house. So talking about ownership is, I think, foreign to most people. Rich people, they know better. They're trying to play with assets. It's even my own mother. I talk to her all the time. We talk about money. She's like, I don't want people knowing about my business. I'm like, you have no business. You have no money. Let's talk to everybody about it, see if we can get it a little bit more because I'm at this point in life. I don't know if this is where you are. We've got like 8-month-year-olds and 85-year-olds, and everyone's got diapers, and we're just trying to manage everybody. As someone in my mid 40s, it's like I'm going crazy trying to get everyone to tell me what the hell is actually going on so we can try to fix a couple of problems. So the issue here is there's that communications barrier about what a dividend is, what people are owed. Again, people generally feel like that it is indignant or they feel embarrassed having to ask for any sort of handout when the only way that we really survive is together. There are no self-made men. I don't care if Ben Franklin said it or Tupac said it. They were both wrong. I don't like either one of them. I think Biggie was a better rapper. But the point is, we're not doing a good job of again having that conversation. And so, specific to what you said, right? We were talking about UBI as a dividend that really decades ago. I just did an event with a group called the Internet Identity Workshop that's been convening for nearly 25 years. And we were talking about this stuff 20 years ago. But the best modern example I can give you and why I'm confident that we can get a UBI implemented here in the US and why we're running on it again is because I was just in Finland, I was just in Denmark, I was just in the Nordic countries, and I was also there in 2017 and 18, like right around the time that we met. And I was pitching them back then, just as I was 4 weeks ago, that they invited me to a conference called Data Ethic. Their prime minister was like their president was there. We spoke back to back and it was about data ethics and protection. I was like, you all have to have an ownership right in order to protect what you think you're being robbed of. Because in order to protect something like in insurance, I've spent my career to survive outside of politics, really, in insurance. And regardless of what people think about insurance, we do two things: we secure life and property. But today, our lives are someone else's property because they have digital evidence of all of our lives. And so, anyway, I told these Danes that back in Copenhagen, way back in 17 and 18, and they laughed. They were like, we don't like your American language. We don't like ownership. We don't like any of that. It's like, fine, whatever. Then I started getting calls to what you said a little bit after Chat GPT. Around
Mm.
23, my phone started ringing. I was like, oh, you all have a budget for a speaker? Because I'm poor too. So they called. And so we just went over there last month to celebrate two big laws that were passed. So the
Okay.
EU collectively passed something called the AI Act, which gives people legal rights and the ability to sue like we do here in America for collective redress or what we would call class action suits. So people can come together and say, you mind all of us for our identities. We like some of the products and services that you're giving to us, but a piece of that market price is owed to us. It's an opportunity for organized labor to now argue on behalf of people, to collective bargain on behalf of people to say, you owe us this dividend. That's number one. The other thing that the Danes are leading on for the rest of the European Union is they gave everyone a property right for their face, their voice, and their body. And it's unprecedented. But you're right, Scott. Before AI existed, no one really cared. And now they all get it. And that's a political opportunity to go, everyone knows or feels like they're being robbed of something. They just don't know how and what we do about it. And therein lies the opportunity. Even when I think about our guy Zoran Mamdani, who will likely, win tomorrow here in New York, while he's talking about bringing the price of living down, which I like, as someone running for national office, I need to also be able to communicate how we bring incomes up. So it's not just bring cost of living down. We need another argument about how to bring incomes up, and we need to meet ourselves in the middle. And that's what I think we owe us, or we owe ourselves that. And that's really what we're campaigning about. We haven't met anyone in the district yet who doesn't like it. They're like, yeah, I know I'm missing some money. I just don't know how to get it. Are you gonna go get it for me?
Yeah, it's like, how many people, when asked, turn down, like a class action lawsuit settlement, and it's like they reached out to you, hey, you used Facebook between these years. I just got paid
I got
like,
one of those.
I think $40 or whatever it was recently from Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, probably a lot of us were. And so the same kind of thing where, like, why would you turn that down?
Yeah.
We deserve our cut. And, what I was thinking of when you were talking about like our likenesses. So like in Denmark, they've got that legal right to their likenesses. And I just want to just mention that it would not be accurate to like only provide someone some amount, some share if their likeness was used, like their specific likeness. Because here we are where all of our likenesses have been fed into this machine,
Yes,
and
already.
now because it has all of us in it, it can pick out like certain people. So same kind of thing where like maybe a celebrity is going to be used more often. You're going to see those celebrities generated, but the only way it can accurately generate the celebrities because it has all of us too. And that's where this kind of like hidden capital is. We're like our hidden capital is part of all this. And because of that, we should actually say, look, I put up my capital. I want my share based on that.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think it is about the community because even if we talk about new data that we're producing tomorrow, right? We were already fed into the machine. And
Yeah.
the reality is the reason that the economy, if anyone looks at the economy since 1970, it is 200 times as productive now as it was back then. Wages used to be coupled with productivity and then they stopped and they
Hmm.
flatlined and productivity scaled. And that gap is the amount of money that we're owed year on year. And sure, while our cultural arbiters, whoever's singing songs or talking about us, probably is, it's not egalitarian. They probably are worth a little bit more here and there for what they do. But what they're really doing is just singing and communicating about our culture. So even when the Beyoncé's and the Taylor Swifts, et cetera, are talking about how people are mining their likeness and taking what they're owed, in my opinion, and I love both of them, they're just singing about us. You know,
Right. Yeah.
when Beyonce was singing about, her bills or whatever, and when we're the same age, we're about 2 weeks apart. She's just thinking about, dudes like me who were just trying to, get over or holler at somebody and see if we can get a free meal. It was, I was terrible in the 2000s. But the point is, um, they're all doing it on behalf of us. And so it can't be a user only dividend. It is specific to culture. But if we think about the broader market, forget music and more accessible stuff. When we think about pharmaceuticals, transportation, telecom, energy supply, different people and their identities need specific things. Like as I've gotten older, I need more medical things. I just saw LeBron James. He just jumped over 40 and he hasn't been playing as the season has started because he's got some sciatica pain. I remember when I turned 40, my legs were hurting. I had some sciatica pain. TMI, I had to go and get a colonoscopy. And but that was stuff that I wasn't doing in my 30s. So there are things that men over 40 need. There are things that black men need, that white men need, that bald men need, that redheads need, that tall people need, that short people need. And we all fit into these classes where the insurance industry is trying to figure out how to secure our life and our property. And there's a dividend that we should be paying out space by space, industry by industry, product by product. Now, today, we have the math to break that out across every product if that's necessary. I think there should be a broader data tax where every company is paying back a piece of their productivity. I think back in 2019, what I was arguing was that we were owed about $2.5 trillion that year alone in dividend.
Right.
If you take that number and extrapolate it out over the working Americans, the adults in the room, it turns into about $1,000 a month.
Yeah, the most recent study, they did an update of the study that you were referring to before, and they just updated it like last year, year before, and now it's what $3.9 trillion per year is what would be flowing to the bottom 90%. That's flowing to the top 1% if inequality had not increased as it did. So, like, whenever when someone's like, "Where does the money come from for UBI?" That's always what I think of is that
Right.
giant gap, and like, well,
Sitting
they
there.
owe us.
It's really they owe us. When I do my implication, so all right, for everyone watching, our campaign slogan is we owe us. And it's less about what the people who own the property of the world owe us, and more about us owing ourselves to advocate for ourselves, to demand it back. Because it has to be a movement. It will have to be about justice for us to get any of it back. Even the reason we have this broad political polarization is we're just so much more desperate than we used to be. We all think the other, whoever that person might be, is eating our lunch. And actually, the lunch truck has not showed up in about 50 years. We started feeling it about 40 years ago. And now people who, like me, who are a little bit over 40, we're pissed because now we know it. It's like I haven't had a
Yeah.
good lunch
And
in
even
40
even
years.
more pissed today, like,
Yeah,
to
I'm way more
see,
pissed today than I was
like, 40 million
January.
Americans
Yeah.
losing SNAP.
Yeah.
It's just insane that here we are. And even, like, a judge saying, "This is you have to legally do this," and then their response being, well, it's not legal for us to actually do this. What? You're arguing against a federal judge about what's legal and what's not? Yeah, it's
It's
crazy.
sad. I mean, it's sad. Like there are about 720,000 people in my congressional district. 300,000. That's the number. Those are people who, in some capacity, get some sort of SNAP or food assistance benefit. And again, it gets back into what is that basic human right? It is things like the bottom part of Maslow's hierarchy, right? It is food, it is shelter, it is clothing. And if we cannot guarantee that base, then we lose the culture that has been so valuable for the past 100 years. Because every solution that every entrepreneur is building is based on a nucleus of people that they see. The economists who just won, the three economists who won the last Nobel Prize in economics, they articulated very clearly that the only difference between really wealthy countries and developing countries are the amount of institutions that they have and the trust in those institutions. So if we cannot secure people first, where they're available to interact with each other and create more institutions and be the arbiters of trust, then it goes away. Because as many people will argue about whatever capital is and what it is not, I will say this as the economist in the room: capital is just trust. If I give you $1 and you give someone else $1 to buy something, we're all trusting that the value that's being transacted there is about the same thing. It's a faith. And the moment, we get so desperate that we lose it, we go back to tribal days. And that's a
And
dangerous
it
place to be.
it applies to yeah, to democracy itself. Like you say, economics, yeah, it's all about trust. Democracy, it's all about trust. And yeah, we're in this system where like how is it that a voter is supposed to like extend their trust to a politician and that politician is basically saying to them, I don't trust you. I think there's a big difference when when a politician says, "I do trust you. I trust you. If you get cash, I trust you to make good decisions with this." And that's actually what the Finland experiment showed that trust went up, and we've seen that in other places too. Even Alaska has seen increased trust with their dividend. It matters when a politician basically looks at the voters and say, "I trust you." You were more likely to trust a politician who trusts you,
Yeah, it
and
breeds
that's what
trust,
we've
right?
lost.
Yeah, one bolt of trust, it snowballs into, again, more trust. But you're absolutely right. That is what we're saying. Even on our site where we talk about UBI, it's like first and foremost, it's I trust you to make decisions about what you need. It may not be what I need. Again, we go too crazy around accountability and responsibility and you name it. It's us saying, I don't trust you to make good decisions on your own behalf. And even if your decision is to buy candy with your food dividend, whatever, like that's on you. Like,
Maybe it's Halloween, you know?
but even if it's not, like, dude,
Right. What's wrong with a little treat? Yeah.
yeah, everybody shouldn't be like a skinny little bastard like me. I forget to eat too much. I need to, eat more. But the point is, right, we all live different lifestyles, but that's the value of all of us being here together. And I think we see that a lot in New York. I do think it is harder to convince folks who are not in these dense cities that everybody else's choices are good. But that's essentially what we're trying to protect here: individual autonomy. I was at a church and a mosque in the last week speaking about, just the campaign and our ethic. And I was like, look, I do think that we have a religion here in America, a through line, and it's not one of the Abrahamics. I was like, I think it's about individual autonomy. What we've been advocating for the past 100 years, which has changed every law where women became voters, where they were allowed to get bank accounts legally after 1972, which is also when value decoupled or productivity decoupled from wages, to different ethnic groups being able to participate, or the Americans with Disability Act passing in 91. All of this has come from us hacking our old ways. Humans have been around for 200,000 years, screwing up and oppressing each other. But in the last century, we've tried to get closer and closer to whatever individual agency might be. And a UBI via a productivity dividend, to be formal, is what it would be. We have to brand it as, like, my last book was called Data as Labor. I've written 4 books more elaborate than this thin thing about why this works, but no one's reading those. So we had to make it real simple. It's like, it's labor. because we're pitching the labor, the labor movement. I didn't want to call it that. The book that I wrote that I thought was worth reading was called The Ethics of Personal Data Collection in International Relations, Inclusionism in the Time of COVID-19. That's the title. It's stupid. It's crazy. Right. But the point is,
It's accurate.
this is about individual agency. It is about that being our core ethic, being allowed to have free thought and free speech around that individual agency and seeing what the market does from that. And what we've seen is that the market does really well when we let people tell us who they are and then we try to help them sustain that. Period.
Yeah. Like we heard so much of this message during the pandemic of, bodily autonomy this and bodily autonomy that. And, it's already kind of response to pro-choice versus
Yeah.
pro-life. And that's a different kind of bodily autonomy. And this is my bodily autonomy or whatever. But it's all about freedom. It's all about us making our own choices for ourselves. And so, yeah, it could be a very conservative viewpoint to just say, look,
Don't tread on me.
yeah, don't tread on me. Let me make my own decisions. The government is not there to make decisions for me. And that's what bugs me too about the SNAP stuff is that, this is government saying, it's distrust. It's saying, look, if I give you cash, then you're going to blow it on stuff. And so I'm going to give you vouchers. You can't use it on hot food
I was
because
getting to that. Right.
that's distrustful. Like you're going to waste it on hot food. So it's not hot
More
food
expensive to
only.
eat on Snap. It's like, so now I have to cook a
Yeah.
chicken. I
Right.
really don't know how to cook a chicken. So give me one of those little hot
Yeah,
joints.
they're like $7, $8, whatever, like even cheaper at Costco. That's a
When I
great
was
deal.
single, that was my life. I'd get one of those chickens in a bag
Mhm.
and take it home with some potatoes. And I would just eat it. This sounds terrible. I can't believe I'm saying this on a pie. I would eat it straight. I would eat it straight out the
There's
bag.
nothing wrong with that.
You know, but I mean, that was my, 29. That was my single man meal. You work all day. I'm coming home a little exhausted. Turn on NBA TV to forget about the world. That's how I forget about everything. Just NBA TV. And I just eat a whole well, no, I wouldn't eat the whole. I would eat, maybe half. I would eat
Sure,
both.
that's what yeah, you get the leftovers,
And
great
then the other
leftovers
half is
afterwards
tomorrow.
too.
Exactly. Right. But you're right. You can't get those on Snap. But that is about trust. It's sold at the grocery store, and you're sitting there looking at it, and then you look at all these unprepared things. Like, okay, now I have to go make it. It's crazy.
Yeah, just treating people differently and saying you can't do that, can't do this. And at the same time, okay, so part of these AI generated videos against the Snap too, that's kind of just I mean, it's not shocking, but it's disgusting. The videos will show like someone, a black woman, pushing a cart full of stuff, like just a giant like stuff to the brim. And then you have like a white woman looking at this and being like, I wish I could afford to buy this, and I have to choose between like this or this. And like these people can just go on and just buy half the store. It's like that old game show, the supermarket spree or something.
Yeah, they
You know,
run.
like
Yeah,
like that's like the SNAP recipients are just going through and just like piling stuff into their cart because they can afford anything. No, it's not how it works. SNAP pays for on average 3 weeks of food every month.
yeah, and most people they're rationing the hell out of it.
Yeah,
They're not going overboard. They're looking at the price of rice or pasta or, whatever it is. Like we just noticed because we buy oatmeal in bulk that we were getting it from Costco delivered, but it's cheaper. There's a local grocery store here called Key Foods. We get more for less. But people are counting every penny. I always tell folks, like, even when they, have a lot of their chest poked out about money issues. I was like, if you know how much money like exactly you have right now, if you're looking at coupons, like you're poor too. And I think that's really what's happening here in New York. We have people with multiple degrees who are making more than 150K a year who still can't afford to live in New York. The price of living issue is definitely a thing. But again, that gap is how answering the question of how do we pull wages up? And I'll do you one better than even I think the SNAP example. I had a woman come to me at a campaign event we did recently, 50 years old, which again, I'm getting old, so I thought she was young. And she was telling me about scrounging up all her money to send her kid to college. He came out of college. He's working as a teacher now, just had a baby. He's 25. And that made me think, oh my God, could this 25-year-old be my kid? Because like you're 50. Anyway, but he's got to make a choice with the new kid now, whether to pay for childcare because it's so expensive or move in with her. And she was like, I'm 50. I'm trying to be Stella and get my groove back. And I do not want my son and my grandson living here with me. But, we'll do what we have to do. He can only pick or choose apartment or childcare, right? But the gap in what he would need to pay to get an apartment, he's probably short. I mean, we did the numbers. He's probably short about 800 or so a month. But again, that dividend would put them right over the top where they
Hmm.
could live, their lives alone and grow whatever their version of their family would be. But people are making decisions like this. And again, these are people who expected to be able to stand on their own and could expand whatever their family's footprint was here, and they can't. They can't, And then they are also calling about the SNAP stuff. Like, we need you to care about what we're doing too, because they're also pitted against, well, the SNAP people are getting help and we're not. It's like, right. Everyone's in need of a bit of help right now.
Just reminded me too. I don't remember the numbers, but it's just something I read recently that again refers to it's kind of like parental basic income is kind of the way that I think of it, which is just you do the survey and the survey will show that like half of people are providing a monthly income as assistance to their kids, and then like where the rich do a lot more than everyone else. But then like, the average, I think right now, for like half of people doing this who are doing this is like around $1,300 a month or something like that. Like it's basic income like level when we're talking about this amount. And so yeah, like some people get that leg up with that base and others don't.
It's real, and some people can't even afford it. My aunt and uncle were just in a series of arguments, and the whole family was talking about it like they were on the brink of divorce because one of my cousins is a dancer in here. My aunt was just, it's her baby. She's gonna send them some money. And my uncle's like, "We don't have it." And she's like, I don't care. We're getting it. This kid is getting whatever he needs to New York it up, right?"
Mm,
So yeah, there's that, there's the subsidy that's coming from them. But again, it will take, and it's the reason I say a we issue and not a they issue, for us to stop being terrified of asking for or demanding what we're owed. Because I think a lot of people get sold, and it's a storytelling issue, right? We're telling this story. It's not a bajillion people going to hear this story, but via the regular media apparatus, the uber rich has sold everyone on the possibility that if they just work hard enough, that they will also get uber rich. And so all of my corporate poor people, and I know bajillions of them, they are kind of quiet because they're like, if I just keep my head down and kill myself to come here and do it as well as James Felton Keith can. I say this when I'm consulting and, even at our firm right now, I'm like, you're not going to be as good at this as me. I've designed a life to be able to run fast and far. You'd have to kill yourself to do this. And it's not fun being me. I'm about 15 pounds underweight. I wish I had time to eat that whole damn chicken. I gotta go out there and talk to people right after this. But they're all hoping that they're gonna get to cash out. And I remember
mm.
being that person about, 15, 20 years ago. And then it just occurred to me, you can't be smart enough to hone in on this amount of capital and trap it,
And lucky
or
enough.
lucky enough.
So
Right.
much luck.
Definitely can't be lucky enough, but you also cannot be smart enough, right? If someone I was somewhere, someone was like, "What about Robert Smith?" I was like, "Dude, don't do that. Don't do that to me." I'm sure I'm better at a cocktail party than Robert Smith. Shout out to Robert Smith. I'm sure he's great. You'd have to have a whole lot of luck and opportunity along with your smarts to crush it. You'd also have to be in the right place at the right time, you know?
Yeah, that's what so much about it is.
Yeah.
I think one of the strongest arguments too for basic income is that to account for luck, like there's the whole veil of ignorance argument saying that, you don't know where you're going to be born, who you're going to be born to, what country, any of that. And so how you design a society that takes that into account, but also, through our lives, just so many things are happening. And there's a study was this fascinating where they modeled this kind of like bad luck and good luck kind of thing. And the outcome of this modeling was that that like the people who are of medium skill or like low skill, they benefit from luck more, and you can have a high skill and you hurt by worse luck more. And so, like basically, if you want a meritocracy, the solution is actually a basic income. They weren't studying a basic income, but they tested like if you give people a large increment of money versus a large like stable increment of money, and that having that base actually removed the destruction of meritocracy or whatever through this people just lucking out or getting bad luck. Like From
Man.
that perspective, it's still a good argument.
No, I love that one actually. You gotta if you can find that, I would love for you to email it to me. But
Yeah,
again,
I'll share that with you.
I think where we are is again, the reason I do this work is again, I just realized you can't come up with a brilliant enough idea to work to solve some of the societal problems unless you're jockeying for real power. When I look at the latest congresswoman out of New Jersey who's wants to launch a basic income pilot and the 7 or 8 who have in the past few years in their districts, I just think, again, we have to get to the point where there are 200 or so elected officials regularly talking about this in every panel. Whether we're talking about ways and means, whether they're talking about defense, it can always come back to an economic issue of who has choice to participate where and why. And until that becomes a normal play, again, I think AI is helping us trend there because we're realizing we could have bots do a lot of things for us, but then what are they doing it for? That work isn't theirs. Whoever owns the enterprise that owns them owns that. And if we're not distributing that ownership of productivity, then we lose everything. And this does get into some really old philosophical arguments. I don't think that they are synonymous with the ones that Marx and company were having 2 centuries ago. I think it's a whole new paradigm because we've never had the ability to micro identify value and distribute it. So we do though, as the mechanical engineer, I'm always taking off one hat, putting it on, but as a mechanical engineer turned economist, I'm still looking at all problems as distribution problems. And so
Yeah, so
that
that's a good segue into like what would you say is what would you say is an effective kind of transfer mechanism, to actually for us to pay us? Like what is that? Like people have spoken about a token tax, or people will talk even about, say, a land value tax or something, because like the wealth goes into that. Like what do you think is like a good way of getting at that GDP kind of dividend, that productivity dividend?
I think it's layered. I think the top layer is just an outright data tax. And I know that there's some new packs that have been popping up that have contacted us who want just a data tax. There's this one called the American Equity First Fund or something like that. And they've just talked about a top line tax. And I think there's a layer under that where we get into location based dividend, which can read like a tax at times. But again, I think the difference is that with the dividend is you'd assess it after productivity. And then I think last but not least would be a market based layer that is distributing awareness of the potential for legal action, like we're seeking redress at this point, for a dividend from productive products and services. So, for anyone not familiar out there, companies make 2 things: products, stuff you touch, and services, stuff you can't touch. And they make all of those based on 2 types of data. Subject matter expert data, meaning I'll pay you 80K because about all the Asian women in the world and we want to sell a product to them. I'll pay you to tell me something. Or people's data, where that group of Asian women just tells you about them directly. You don't need to pay an 80K subject matter expert. But as they take that in, we can calculate what they owe, right? And so I think it's 3 layers. I think we can implement the first few policies, if not at the federal level, which might be difficult in this time. We still need federal communicators to get it done at the state level. Now, in places like New York, Texas, California, we can leverage our state's constitutions to demand that every company within our borders or that has more than 15 employees per our borders owes us that tax because the nucleus of population that exists in the big cities around the country is not getting ready to go away. It's always going to be where the intellectual capital is. And the best example I can think of recently is when Amazon was seeking its
Mm-hmm.
headquarters 2.0, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's like, they're coming to Kentucky, they're coming to Michigan. I was like, no, they're not. They're either coming to New York or DC because that's where all of the fast moving intellectuals exist. And they did. They came to New York and DC. They're right here in Queens. My friend Chris Moss created their first labor union. And now I think they'll likely be the first union to negotiate for a dividend above wages. So I think it's 3 layered like that. I think there's a broad tax for everyone who's participating. I think there's a location based tax, so maybe city by city, anointed by the big states. DC will be problematic because they don't exist in a city with a constitution, or that's tied to a state with a constitution. But states have a lot of authority to enforce a tax and dilute what goes into the federal tax system. And then last but not least, I think there's some entrepreneurial opportunities to communicate to people what we assume they are owed by every microtransaction they're engaging. And on a given day, we've done some of this research at the Keith Institute, but people interact with about 200 companies, and they probably all owe you a micro amount. If you extrapolate that out monthly, it becomes a real heavy number, a couple of $100. So I think it's those three. I think
Mhm.
those three interacting with each other gives us a good market to understand what value is and argue that, look, I'm not saying that Mark Zuckerberg is not worth 2, 10, 30 times what I'm doing, but he's not worth 300,000 times what
Right.
that's
Yeah.
ridiculous. So we'll still have relatively rich people. It's just instead of being billionaires, they might you be making out for 10 mil. But as the research says, your life doesn't really change that much after 10 mil. Look, I don't need it. I've been pretty privileged. You know, I live where I want to live. I've gotten, good favor from everyone I thought was cute over the years. I just I just want to kind of sustain this. There are no good times that I can be bought off for. But I think that's the biggest problem. We have too many ugly people in Congress that are available to be bought off with a
Yeah.
good time to shut up. So we need more people who did well in high school with a pretty girl like them to run for office and talk about how everybody else that sometimes stumbles up a flight of steps is owed a dividend for their input to the productive economy.
I like it. I like it. One of our biggest issues, I feel, is just this political class that is just completely disconnected from everybody else. They don't know how to talk to people like normal people. And like their idea of what seems like a good idea is amazingly aligned with their donors and people with a lot more money than they have. So, I mean, yeah, it's just it's important for those like you to who are actually down to earth and know what's up to actually run for office.
We got to do it. And we only have a little time. I was telling someone else about succession. I'm in favor of term limits. I was like, look, I've got maybe 15 years before I should shut up. I feel like I'm right I think I know something right now, but it may not be the case in 6 years. And then you got to spend six telling me we got to walk you out there. It'll take a minute because I'll think I'm, great. And everyone's dealing with that, right? We have to acknowledge where our egos get in the way. But yeah, look, this is the work. I think again, for anyone else who's out there just thinking about politics, I'm not saying you need to run for Congress, but participate in some way. And one thing I will say that has helped me do just being in politics while doing this work is, as you know, in communities that we participate in, they get very intellectual. It took me a long time to convince people to do that march in 2019 because they were like swooning over their own ideas in a book. And I was like, if it's not spiritual, and that is not my language as a physics and economics guy, but it's gotta be indoctrinated. You gotta feel, smell people sweat. Walking down the street, you have to physically do something together for them to trust you so that you can fight for whatever the good thing is together. And so I found everyone who worked with that march after they really enjoyed it. And I was like, this is why you see all those old people in the 60s marching and singing. Everything is a song away from getting your buy-in. So I would just say to people, figure out how to participate. And the more you have conversations with people who are not nerdy about economics, the economics of poverty, or you name it, the more you will figure out how to speak to them, the more you reduce that long worded book to just data is labor. And people go, huh, I think I know what that means, but I don't know. Tell me more. That's what you want. You want an icebreaker so that you can have a longer conversation. It's like a date. You meet somebody at a bar, start out with something simple, not too creepy. Don't tell them how cute they are. Don't, just break the ice. And then second thing you say is, this is how cute I think you are. But first things first, just as a guy who does well at a bar, you got to start with a little icebreaker. And then you build on to, I want to love you for the rest of your life or the next week until I realize we actually don't like each other. It only takes a week, folks. It only takes a week. Yeah.
Well, before we go, did you want to mention even just a little bit more of your overall platform
Yeah.
beyond the dividend?
Yes, I mean, look, the overall platform is, again, we want to bring down the price of living and bring up everyone's income. So we have in our district, per the amount of money that a congressman can bring in, we've built a system to create free childcare. We have a plan to build 10,000 new housing units to bring down not only the cost of living, but specifically the price of housing. And we think we can make these units deeply affordable. And by deeply, I mean under 30% of the area median income. So these are for working people who make between 35 and 65,000 a year. We have a neon green new deal because I'm a big advocate for nuclear energy on top of other energy sources. I mean, and the list goes on. I think we've introduced a lot of innovative ideas via our platform, but I am most proud of and think the most innovative idea is this data dividend, because what it really gets to the core of is talking to people about how valuable they are. And unlike, the preacher man, the imam, the rabbi, the leader of the temple, when they tell you they're valuable, I mean it factually. I mean, I can demonstrate to you how much more valuable I think you are yesterday and how you need it tomorrow. And so we want to run for office as the crazy guy who's like, the world owes me some money. They owe me some money too. I live in a 1 bedroom apartment here in New York, and I want to stay, right? But I have to be able to afford to. So I'm running this campaign for me, and I'm just asking everybody else to make this their movement. Like, we owe ourselves the opportunity to take this back, and that's all we're asking our neighbors to do. When we go door to door, as we will be tonight, we're asking them to do this. I'm available to take the most punches. All the DMs telling me to jump on Facebook, I can look at that stuff without crying. But this is really about everybody else. We gotta take our peace back, or we're cooked.
Yeah, yeah. And so let's say we're on the other side of this. We the dark crazy times are over and we're starting to rebuild. And of course, UBI is a dividend. This is part of this future. What do you see as far as electoral reforms, democracy reforms? Like, how do we actually strengthen our democracy through these structural changes that can actually protect us from future dark times?
Sure. I think we proposed a few things also on our site. It's just at jamesfeltonkeith.com/platform or /issues. I think two big pieces that will matter, because things are getting ready to get worse next year. Regardless of what we do, in June and November, those are the primary and the general elections of next year, right? Democrats will win. We will get more votes, even with all the gerrymandering. We've got like 35 opportunities to take some seats, and then a few people like me are going to take seats from do nothing Democrat incumbents. But as we do that, Trump and company are not going to seat us in January, and it's going to feel chaotic, and it will be. And so what we will do is we'll have to rebuild the institutions of democracy. And we know that democracy, or really being a human, being a community, is a story. That's why we're all podcasting now. And that's why they're all doing so well, is because we want to be talking to each other. And now we have the opportunity to do that at scale. And so the first thing we would add are term limits. I don't think anyone should be elected to U.S. Congress for more than 6 terms. That's 12 years for anyone that's not familiar. I will be dumb and irrelevant and stuck in my old man ways in 12 years. I just got 12 years, folks. So you want to meet me now, because I won't be somebody you like later. It'll be like, okay, boomer. So term limits first. But the other, I think the feedback that we've gotten is that it's more radical, but it's not. I think it makes perfect sense. Is we think we need a supreme press. So we have 3 branches of government that prop up democracy. We have the executive branch, that's where the president is. We even see that in cities, that be a mayor or a governor at your state level. And then we have the houses, the legislature, the people who make the laws or propose them. We're interviewing the people, hopefully, and then bringing back solutions or problems to the executive, right? Those would be the lower house, like Congress, and the upper house, like Senate. We have that in some form in every state. And then we have the judiciary, which we have seen be co-opted by the executive branch because it is an appointment-based system. What I think we need to add to that is not only expanding that third branch, the judiciary, so that it matches the space and the population of America, but I think similar things state by state. But the last, but I think thing that I'm most proud of is we've proposed a supreme press to prop up that individual autonomy and free speech. And it's not just where we're regulating what stories go where, but I think we need to create the journalistic class in the way we have the legal class via the judiciary, where we know who has bona fides and who doesn't, where we liberalize funding to institutions that build up journalism as a profession. I think we need to process and prop up and pay for more local media because we're losing hyper local storytelling. And the thing is, what we've proposed on our site with a Supreme Press is it actually creates a whole lot of new economic activity, as you can imagine, as storytelling becomes more localized. If we do not scale the validity of storytelling across the board in this country, we lose whatever democracy was, and we lose local people's ability to participate in that democracy. And we've just seen that essentially as Americans' population has grown. Essentially, we're too big for the old model. So I think those three things: term limits, expand the judicial branch, and add a fourth branch that has equal lethal authority as the judicial, the legislative, and the executive branch. And I don't think anyone has ever uttered that who's run for office. But quite frankly, I've dropped like a couple gems on our website that no one has ever talked about, and I'm patting myself on the back because not enough people pat me on the back, and quite a few people pat me on the back. But I like me and what I'm doing. I think our stuff is the shit, and everyone needs to vote for us. And I said so.
All
Yep,
right. Yeah. Check out his check out our website, jamesfeltonkeith .com.
yep.com. But thanks,
Great.
Scott. This has been great. I really do have to. I'm getting calls about the food pantry. I hope nothing crazy happened over there. I just see my phone is acting.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
Well, yeah, it was great seeing you again.
Great talking to you.
Good luck.